The Phoenix Suns season continues to spiral into chaos. Kevin Durant getting into it with Coach Bud on the sideline, some of the worst body language in the entire league, and quite frankly, just some of the worst basketball you can watch in the entire league right now. The focus in Phoenix now shifts to the offseason and more specifically, Devin Booker. Now you might be wondering, why are we not talking about Kevin Durant? Well, for one, that has been discussed a bunch on this channel already, and I honestly don't think there's that much intrigue around Durant this offseason. It is almost a certainty, in my opinion, that Kevin Durant is on a new basketball team. This offseason, there's a couple of likely destinations that we've already talked about in other videos. There's just too many bad vibes around the situation. They've already tried to move him at the deadline, and if you watch Suns games, it's clear that Kevin Durant has checked out on this team. But the Suns' comments on Devin Booker recently have been really interesting to me, saying publicly that they want to build around him, that he's their guy, that he is the guy that they are going to keep, again, making it clear that Durant is unlikely to be on the team next year. And the two questions I have around that are, one, are they actually going to keep Devin Booker this offseason? And two, how can they actually convince themselves that that's the right decision? First, are they actually going to keep Devin Booker? They can say whatever they want to publicly. A bunch of teams around the league are going to call about Devin Booker. We've already gotten a bunch of rumors about what some of those Devin Booker teams could be. It's similar to the situation with Kevin Durant at the deadline, where we went into the deadline a few weeks prior, and the concept of Kevin Durant getting traded from the Phoenix Suns was not all that likely. It looked like Phoenix's focus was entirely on adding Jimmy Butler, getting rid of Bradley Beal, continuing to try and build around that group. And then by the time we got to the deadline, it seemed likely that Durant was going to get traded, even to the point that there were trades agreed to send him to Golden State that Durant turned down because he didn't want to go back to Golden State, didn't want to get traded midseason. There was a construction that ended up with him in Miami potentially. And I can see the Devin Booker situation taking a similar path, where they go into the offseason saying that they aren't going to trade him, but it quickly becomes clear that the best decision for the franchise is to move on from Devin Booker. The other question of this is, in terms of will they actually be able to keep him, is that it's not entirely up to Phoenix whether or not he stays. Devin Booker can look at this situation logically and realize this is not a championship contending situation in Phoenix over the next couple of seasons, and at that point, he could just ask to leave. Not to mention the fact that as we get to the how can they do that, how can they actually convince themselves keeping Devin Booker would be the correct decision part of this, there's pretty much no real smart basketball person on the planet that would look at this situation in Phoenix and think that in terms of contending for a championship, keeping Devin Booker this offseason is the right thing to do. Because what the Suns are saying publicly is that they want to not only keep Devin Booker, but they think that they're going to be able to compete with him. They're going to build a championship contending team around him, and that just seems extremely unlikely to me. Booker is getting close to 30 years old. This team is going to take years to turn into something even remotely resembling a contender, barring some kind of absolute miracle in the form of Durant and Beal trades that actually turn this team into something that looks like a contender. And even in a scenario where you trade away Durant and you somehow find a way to get something in exchange for Bradley Beal, which would be unlikely in my opinion, you're not going to get nearly as much in exchange for Durant as you traded away to get him in the first place. So how are you going to go from a team that right now, as currently constructed, is not a contender, and then trade away Kevin Durant for likely not an outstanding trade package? You're not getting like a bunch of starters and a bunch of picks in exchange for Kevin Durant at this point in his career, and then somehow convince yourselves that that is going to result in title contention. They're probably not going to get anything for Beal. They don't have any other assets on the team. They traded away all of these future first round picks, and the realistic option here is to trade Durant, get some of your picks back, trade away Booker, get some of your picks back, and move forward with something closely resembling a blank slate. And quite frankly, I don't know why you would keep Devin Booker at this point. I understand that he has been extremely loyal to the franchise and he's someone that has been there for a while, and that sentiment makes sense to me. It's a difficult decision to realize that not only will Booker end up on a different basketball team, but that it's all because of decisions that you, and more specifically the new owner, made. Because a couple years prior, this was a finals team. They had role players around Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and then they felt like if they added Durant, they were going to be able to take that next step. And everything that they've done since they made the finals, and then more specifically since they got destroyed by the Mavs the year following in the playoffs, has led them to this point. And the fact that Devin Booker is still there and he's still loyal is a testament more to his loyalty than it is to anything that Phoenix has done over the last couple of seasons. And at this point, it's very easy to see that you could get a ton in exchange for Booker, a decent amount of stuff in exchange for Kevin Durant, and reset your franchise, and that would be the correct choice. And of course, the question is, what would the teams be? Houston is a team that is always going to be connected to Phoenix because of the access that they have to Phoenix's future first round picks over the next couple of seasons. In any scenario in which you're trading away both Booker and Durant, you want those picks back from Houston. But let's just say that you get some of your picks back from Houston via Durant trade. What are some other teams? Well, a team that's been thrown out there that I find super interesting is the Detroit Pistons. Now, the scenario where Devin Booker decides realized that he would like to leave and then he ends up in Detroit seems pretty far-fetched, because even though Detroit's having a nice season from an organizational standpoint, even with the way things have gone in Phoenix the last couple of seasons, it makes more sense for Booker to be in Phoenix than it does in Detroit. It's not exactly a desirable destination in terms of city, all that stuff. But from a basketball perspective, Detroit is absolutely going to be looking for upgrades similar to something resembling adding a Devin Booker-like player to their team alongside Cade Cunningham, keeping some of the young guys potentially in that trade. And then if you're Phoenix, you're able to get some young guys, some future picks, and move forward, hopefully with some of your own picks back via a trade with Houston as well. And to me, a Devin Booker to the Pistons trade would look pretty similar to how Cleveland added Donovan Mitchell a couple of years ago, where from a basketball perspective, it makes a lot of sense. It's a team that needs a little bit more playmaking. It's a team that would take another step up if they were able to add Devin Booker. And although I'm not putting a ton of stock into these rumors because they're nothing official, they're nothing with super plugged in insiders, I think as a thought experiment, theoretically, Devin Booker Detroit would be super interesting. There's other teams around the league like Oklahoma City that, could you imagine if they suddenly decided to cash in on all these picks and use one of their salary slots on adding someone like Devin Booker to take their team to a new level? If Phoenix wants to, if they look into their options in terms of trading away Devin Booker, there's going to be a bunch of teams interested. And again, as I said earlier, they can say whatever they want to publicly about we're not trading him. Teams are going to call. They're going to offer a ton in exchange for him. And at that point, you really have to consider it if you're Phoenix. And ultimately where I land on this is that if Devin Booker is still on the Phoenix Suns at the beginning of next season, it will be the biggest show of blind loyalty that we have seen in the NBA really over the last couple of seasons. Because if he looks at this situation and just evaluates the future of the Phoenix Suns, where they're going from here, especially once Kevin Durant gets traded away and then you're just looking at assets in exchange for Kevin Durant, when he looks at that situation, it's going to be very easy for him to come to the conclusion that they're not going anywhere over the next couple of seasons. This is a guy that has made one finals in his career, that's been in one place his entire career, that wants to win a championship, and yes, wants to be loyal to his team, but wants to win a title. And if he looks at this situation, he's going to realize that that's just not going to happen in Phoenix. And if it does happen, he's going to be like 33, 34 years old by the time he has a chance at it again, because of the way the assets of this team have been distributed over the last couple of seasons. They had their all-in window, they went for it, and it didn't work. And in every other scenario, for almost any other player around the league, this would be the time for them to jump ship, to go to a different team, to request a trade. And Phoenix can say whatever they want to publicly, but I think this is going to come down to the decision of Devin Booker. I think Matt Ishbia is stubborn enough to convince himself that if they keep Devin Booker, they can build this team into something over the next year or two that might resemble a contender. He's wrong, but I think he's stubborn enough to consider that as an option. And Devin Booker is going to have to be the guy to look at this and say, okay, this isn't working. It's cool that I want to be loyal to my team. It's cool that, I've had a ton of success in Phoenix, at least in the prior few years, not counting the last couple. But at a certain point, you can take loyalty too far if you really want to go out and win an NBA title. And there are going to be options out there for Devin Booker, teams that have a bunch of assets that they can trade in exchange and still have a title contending team, a team better than what he has in Phoenix right now. And those are options he absolutely has to explore. It's not a 100% certainty that Devin Booker ends up on a different basketball team at the start of next season, that he gets traded this offseason. But I think if you just look at the scenario in Phoenix, if he was thinking about it without thinking entirely about loyalty, it would be a very realistic and a very likely option.